So right out of college, I joined SpaceX. One of my college advisors linked me up with the site director at the time. And we had a phone interview pretty quickly. Met Elon, joined the company, and I started working on the development of the Draco thrusters on the Dragon propulsion system for SpaceX. I probably have a different story than most, but I've wanted to be what I would call a static test stand rocket engineer since I was in about 4th grade. So quite unusual, very specific, but where it all started with a project where I wanted to see how consistent ST's model rocket motors were. So when I was pretty young, I did a science fair project and I got some help from a high school teacher to do some testing in one of the fume hoods at the high school. So we measured thrust of various different ST's model rocket motors. And from there I was hooked. So I started going into some of the amateur rocket work and then ended up working with a few folks that were local to my area that I met through a university connection, and we were making our own rocket propellant and seeing what different changes in the formulas change thrust. So this is all in the beginning of high school. And from there I did a few rocket competitions, some through AIAA, some through NASA, and that really encouraged me to keep going on that path. There's a lot of enjoyment there, a lot of opportunity. All through college, similar type work, but working on hybrids and a few small liquid motors. And I had followed SpaceX from its very beginning. I knew some of the founders from their amateur rocket days beforehand, and I was watching them because they were kind of what I was aspiring to do in my own free time. So that led me right to SpaceX. Well, I think one benefit of SpaceX and a lot of companies is there's a lot of opportunity out there if you go and take it. So it isn't something that you have to wait for. And so at SpaceX, the responsibility is up for the taking. We have a humongous task, and there's the benefit, especially in the time frame that I came in and in McGregor, to jump in and really take ownership. And I took that very seriously. I watched a lot of my colleagues have very high levels of ownership. So that showed me, hey, if I do that and follow what they're doing, there's a lot of opportunity there. I've also done a few things where I realized that there were some interests that I had in SpaceX that I was not currently working on. And there's always the avenue where if you'd like to get involved and help out, that's there. So I jumped in on some of the early Raptor development, somewhat in my own free time, somewhat at the company, and started that program in Texas just from some small testing. And now I lead a team of a bunch of folks working on one of the world's most advanced rocket engines. Yeah, I'd encourage myself to find a work mentor early on. It doesn't have to be a formal kind of setup or relationship. It can be pretty informal. But most people are very receptive, especially as senior engineers, to saying, hey, will you mentor me? Will you give me some career advice? I did that a little later than I wanted to, and that was incredibly helpful, not only for my professional career, but also in life in general. Yeah, so I think mentorship is a great way to learn the lessons of others without repeating them. That's one huge aspect. The other is the workplace can be complicated. The tasks that we have as engineers are difficult. Having someone you can bounce ideas off of, bounce career directions off of is super important. So, and I've had some really great mentors the whole time throughout high school and into college. So I think separately from the workplace, the early mentorship is really invaluable. So I try to get involved in a lot of the local area projects that have to do with rockets. So I do some science fair judging and some rocket competition judging and assisting with a whole bunch of kids in the same actual competition that I did and did well, and that really kick-started my career. So I love giving back in that aspect. And then in the workplace, I really try to spend a lot of time with the new engineers. So you'll see me out in the field pretty often. I find it invigorating to me It remotivates me as I work with them, and it also really assists and jumpstarts them moving in the right direction. I think the biggest lesson that I've learned is simplicity in design, whether that be in a product design or a concept of operations. That is what we should strive for. And we're not, as engineers, especially in the space and satellite industry, there's a plethora of very complicated solutions out there, and yeah, the ultimate ones are simplicity. So go back to first principles. I hear one of my bosses say that all the time to us, and I think that's a really great lesson, is go back to first principles, re-look at your problem, and try to think simply first, and then go from there. Yeah, I am super excited about American-built rockets flying manned missions again. And I think we're in the dawn of an amazing era where there are so many different advancements in technology and in the space industry that are going to lead to a pretty amazing future. So I'm really looking forward to being part of that, and to see us colonize another planet. That's very exciting to me.